Okay, hello and welcome to our On Target teletraining series. I'm Andrea Kern, the founder of Big Bark, your online source for everything big dog. Tonight we have Alicia Evans. She's a holistic dog trainer joining us. Her training methods are focused on natural ways to train and understand our big dogs. Tonight we're discussing a common issue with big dogs and certainly one of my biggest training frustrations, jumping up on people. So let's get started. So tell us, Alicia, why do dogs and puppies jump on people?
Well, jumping is a totally natural function for dogs because think about how they play with each other, right? It's the way they greet each other. It's especially as puppies, they start getting bigger and they start jumping on each other. Sometimes it's the way they greet their parents, they're really excited and, once mom starts feeling the puppies out a little bit more, she decides, they can crawl all over her. And it's also a way that they play, and exercise their muscles. And, it's important for dogs to have a really good balance muscularly between their front and their back end. So a lot of the times, just in running, they don't really get a chance to exercise the strength of those back leg muscles. So jumping plays a part in that. And it also plays a part sometimes in dominance. The first dog to kind of lift its front legs off the ground is doing a lot to establish dominance. So the interesting thing, though, is especially when you have a big dog that starts out as a little puppy, while it's very cute, to have your dog climb up and crawl up in your lap, that dog is going to probably be about 10 times its size very quickly. So it is a really big problem because, the bottom line is you can't have a dog, and remember, too, with some of the big dog puppies, at 6-7 months, these dogs could be, anywhere from 40 to 90 pounds. So at that point, they don't really understand, hey, jumping on a kid could knock it down. They just understand, hey, there's somebody kind of my size and definitely kind of like my energy. So let's go jump on them and let's start a play session. So that's really kind of where the roots of jumping start. It's nothing malicious. It's actually really all about play, but it's obviously really important that we help our animals at a young age understand that in human terms, jumping does not mean the same thing that it means in dog terms.
Okay, so what are some of the consequences of us not properly teaching our young puppy or our big dog not to jump up on people?
We've got the consequences of, you've got young children or you've got elderly people that they could jump on and knock down and hurt. That's kind of one of the primary ones. Another one is that, another dog, if you've got a dog that jumps, in all likelihood, if their behavior is not balanced, they can go into a situation with another dog, misreading the energy, and with unharnessed energy of their own that they're kind of putting out there, there could be a fight and kind of, severe consequences of bites and scrapes and things like that, because when a dog does not understand from pack mentality with other dogs how to balance in their energy or how to harness it, another dog, just as part of dog psychology, might go in there and try to correct them. Now, the consequence of that is that if the dog is just over-exuberant and bounding and, just that big wiggly puppy energy, if they get corrected, in all likelihood, they'll just kind of, whoa, okay, sorry, that's a boundary, I'll back off. But in cases where the dogs, especially some of the larger dogs that have, protection in their instincts, like some of your large guarding dogs, like your St. Bernards, your Bernese Mountain Dogs, your Shepherds, even Great Danes. Great Danes were guard dogs. So when those guys get to a certain age of puppyhood, they just kind of shift from being a playful puppy to now I'm an adult, now I'm going to start to move into my job. But if their boundaries have not been clear the entire time and their energy is out of balance, if another dog doing just what dogs do in the dog psychology energy part of it goes to correct that dog might decide, hey, I'm not going to back off, I'm just going to fight with you, because they're not reading the energy properly, because the humans have taught, the dog a way of being that's kind of a little bit imbalanced, where another dog would have been keeping them in check all the time. So some of the consequences of the dogs jumping are really that they can hurt people, not meaning to, but they can. They can frighten people. And it really kind of is like the first steps. I don't know if you've ever been around like brown bears, but what brown bears do is when they get threatened, they kind of like stomp their feet and they huff. Okay, and that's really their protective signal to say you need to back off. With dogs that are jumping, a lot of the times they're not reading the energy correctly. So it can start fights that really could be easily avoided by helping them understand how not to jump. So it kind of presents a false front, and the consequences of that could be, unmitigated fights, hard to take your dog down the street. The other part of it, too, without them realizing their size, as they get bigger, if they believe that they're in control of the walk, that jumping could lead to them pulling you down the block. And it's really, really kind of frustrating, especially with, trying to correct a dog that's large, that's got a lot of torque, and that can easily pull you.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm sure there's a lot of frustration about that.
There is. So how early is too early to teach your puppy not to jump?
Through my Instinct method, where I come from and where I work as a holistic trainer is recognizing not just, at 16 weeks we start training and do sits and downs and comes and stays. I start teaching correction behaviors as soon as the puppy comes home, because it's so much easier if you know the little things that you can do on an everyday basis. And even if you do them 5 to 10 times a day consistently, you will be keeping that puppy's energy in balance the way his mom would be if he had stayed with his mom, or his brothers and sisters would be. Because typically what happens is, as humans, we wait till the 16 weeks, till we've got all our shots, then we start training. But what's happened is, generally most people get puppies anywhere from like 7 to 10 weeks. So anywhere in that 5 to 8 week time period that we're not doing puppy training, we're developing a lot of bad behaviors. And the biggest thing, and especially with jumping, if you're teaching your puppy on an everyday basis, little by little, how to sit, how to stay, how to come. If you're teaching them that jumping on anything or anyone is unacceptable, it's going to be a lot easier, because there's been that consistent foundation built up, to help your puppy learn how to harness their energy instead of waiting till 16 weeks, as a lot of times, we're taught, to start working with them. So my recommendation really is, as soon as they come home, you have to be in the mindset of understanding, how does a dog think? And although I'm a human and they're a dog, how can I be the best parent from that dog's perspective, in order to be able to help them grow into their greatest potential, without letting them get too big or letting their energy get too far ahead. So how can I avoid any problems by knowing who and how I need to be in order to help this animal thrive in their environment and going forward? And one of the things that I created to help pet parents with that, I created my 6 Secrets program, which is a home study course, and it's called 6 Secrets Your Dog Wants to Teach You to Unleash the Greatness Within You. And the foundation of it is really the inner awareness that all the dogs share, that we as humans don't really get this training. So it's really teaching the human what they need to know, who they have to be as a being to be a really great, authentic, effective leader to their dog. And then, we work in the sits and the stays and the comes and the downs. But there's a lot of pieces energetically. There's 6 key pieces that I have found that really go into helping a human become a great leader to their dog from the beginning. And if you'd like to get any more information on that, it's located on the Walk in Sync site, which is walkinsync.com, and it's under the products section, which I think is the third drop down, and it says Walk in Sync Home Study Course, if you'd like some more information on that. And really, Andrea, that's what we've kind of been working with on the calls, is to give the humans those insider tips on how to see training really from their dog's perspective, because most training, it's kind of built on quote-unquote behavioral science, but we're looking at applying human understanding to dogs who have a totally different psychology. So, excuse me. So what I've done in my InSync, in all of the training that I do and everything I teach you how to understand how your dog actually thinks and what they actually know and how another dog would actually train the dog so that you're coming more from a language that your dog actually understands and really gets.
Right, exactly. So can you give us just some ideas of what are the best ways to teach our puppy or a big dog to stop jumping?
Absolutely. I know I've said it a couple of times throughout the course, but I'm going to say it again. A dog's strongest form of communication is pictures. So one of the first things that you're going to do in teaching your dog how not to jump, every time the dog jumps, what happens is we as humans don't realize that we kind of have these pictures that formulate in our mind as something's happening. But not only don't we realize that part of it, we also don't realize the pictures that we send out. So let's just say your dog jumped on you and you don't want them to jump. What we do is, as humans, we tend to hold on to the picture of the dog jumping on us while our mouths are saying, don't jump. So if the dog's strongest form of communication is a picture and you're reinforcing with intensity a picture of them doing exactly what you don't want them to do, this is really, really a first step, because as humans we don't really understand how much our dogs quickly pick up on the pictures. So the first thing you're going to do is literally, if you don't want your dog to jump, picture your dog not jumping. Okay? And I know that's a little bit of a confusing
really
one.
Hard.
I know, but it's, the funniest thing I have to laugh about, because if you've ever studied like The Secret or, the whole law of attraction, which is like focus on what you want, the funniest thing to me, and I don't mean it funny like laughing at people, but I think the most ironic thing is that so many times when I'm working with people and we're doing training and they ask their dog to sit, right? And I'm like, well, okay, what picture are you showing your dog? And like they're like, well, I'm staring at my dog standing. I'm like, okay, so if your dog thinks in pictures, don't you think it would help to show them a picture of them sitting? And it's so funny because it's like the dogs are actually teaching us the first foundational principles, like of these laws of attraction. You have to focus on what you want, not what you don't. And so most of us don't even realize that our dogs think in pictures. So it's super important if you want to teach your dog not to jump, even if you see your dog jumping, when you go to correct your dog to say, no jump, you got to show them the picture of them not jumping. And I know that's a hard one, but it's so funny because it's so the opposite of what we tend to think, and what we tend to do. And what we don't understand from a dog's awareness is that if their strongest form of communication is pictures, and we're showing them a picture of them jumping, but then we're getting mad at them and correcting them sometimes in anger or frustration because they're jumping, we're the ones that are screwing up the picture. We're the ones that are actually intensifying our dog's jumping because we're showing them the picture of what we don't want, and then we're amping up our energy behind it. Does that make sense?
It does.
I know it's challenging to correct because we have to actually correct us more than we have to correct the dog. But I swear by it. I mean, I do this with clients all the time and have done it over the last 10 years with hundreds and hundreds of clients. And it is amazing because I'm laughing at how quickly the dogs are teaching us to have the right picture with the right words, with the right intention. And that really, it's what I find so funny is that it really lines up with the whole entire law of attraction. Focus on what you want, speak what you want, and then also feel the intention of receiving that. And when we have a different picture and our words say a different thing, even though we think we're communicating clearly, in our dog's awareness, we're not communicating clearly, and that's why we're having these challenges. So first, number one thing in correcting jumping, again, get really clear on the picture that you want, which is the dog not jumping. Then you can speak the words of them not jumping, like their feet are on the floor and you're showing them a picture of that, and you can feel your dog moving into that space and yourself moving into that space of comfort once your picture, your words, and your intentions are aligned. And then all of a sudden you get a calmer dog that's not jumping. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I always recommend when you are starting out with puppies and if you have any kind of jumping issues, you need to have tools that assist you in helping your dog understand what you mean. So the first thing, if a dog is pulling, and especially if we have a collar on and we've got puppies that are going to become very strong very quickly, most of the time what we do, we're walking, all of a sudden the dog starts pulling. What's the first thing we do? We pull back. But every time we pull back, because the dog is a quadruped and because of how their biomechanics work, we're actually taking that dog and we're throwing it off balance because we're pulling it backwards and its sense of balance is completely off. So then what happens is the dog feels like it needs to pull forward more, which also drives right into that jumping, like excitement phase. Mm-hmm. So one of the best things that you can do when you're starting your puppy out, or you have a dog that does pull, shorten up the distance on that leash. Not like the death grip, like where you're wrapping your hand, like the leash around your hand where you're like, okay, I got a really good grip now. Because when that does is it just signals to your dog there's some kind of danger, right? And think about, in terms of danger and in terms of big dogs that are guarding dogs, think about what their defenses were in order to stop a predator. One of them was use their mouth. The other one was jump on them and knock them down to the ground and then hold them there till the human got there. So when we go out and we walk our dogs and we are any type of nervous or we're any type of uncertain, our dogs start to go on guard. So that is also seriously promoting the jumping behavior in a lot of big dogs. So the best thing to do is get a leash or get equipment that is really, really comfortable for you, that helps you relax. I highly recommend, I make a product called the Get a Grip Leash, which I think is just awesome because it gives the right amount of room. It gives the person a lot of comfort in holding these rubber handles so that they actually relax. And the other thing I hugely suggest, too, if you want to stop jumping behaviors, put your dog in a front clip harness. Because when the leash is around the neck, it's really, really easy for the dog to just pop up and launch at somebody. But when the dog is in a harness that's front clip, it gives the dog a much better perspective of how large they really are in space and time. When we have a collar around the dog's neck and they're pulling or they're jumping, they're lunging forward to try and get us to move. But the problem is it kind of starts choking them a little bit. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was being choked a little, I'm going to have a very hard time listening or concentrating or focusing on what's behind me. I'm actually cued into the threat that's in front of me or the play that's in front of me. So by putting your dog in a harness that clips at the front, what starts to happen is your dog gets a much better sense of their body. You couple that with a leash that has very, very clear boundaries and a very clear distance, and then all of a sudden your dog starts actually backing into their own body. They start reconnecting themselves, realizing, whoa, I didn't really realize I was this big in space and time. And so what that does is it calms the dog, but it also calms you. So a lot of those excitable behaviors that lead to the jumping, you're already preventing them before they even happen. And also, too, with a large breed pup that gets, starts growing really big, it helps the dog understand a clear sense of boundaries, and when they can learn to manage their own energy, then all of a sudden, like a little kid running in front of them, or another puppy running out, or, someone that might make you as the human a little nervous, and you're actually calm and controlled because you have your dog, all of those things are going to contribute to your dog being relaxed, to you being relaxed. So the whole energy that kind of surges in them for the jump, we kind of cut it off a lot earlier, so it makes it a lot easier for both of you to be in a space where jumping sort of becomes like a non-issue. Because as you know, Andrea, from having big dogs, it can be really frustrating when your dog starts to lunge and jump. The other thing, too, when that happens, it can be embarrassing. And we get pissed off and we get frustrated with the dog, but it really is as simple as changing to the proper tools that help you be calm and relaxed, that help your dog understand how big they are in space and time, and that also promote consistency so your dog really understands how to back off of pressure and energy, which really, really helps to cut the jumping drive by about 85 to 90%.
Interesting. So
yeah.
Okay, I think that's probably everything we wanted to say for tonight, unless you have anything else, Alicia.
Nope. I just want to say, in terms of jumping, you're getting a dog that's moving into a behavior that they're thinking that they're being a leader. So take the steps. Really, tools make a huge, huge difference. There's a lot of front clip harnesses on the market, and I definitely, obviously just because I invented it and because I've seen the way it works, I definitely recommend the Walk in Sync system, which you can see at walkinsync.com. And we make front clip harnesses that are really biomechanically correct. We don't ever want to cut the dog off from a pulling behavior by cutting off their movement patterns. So I designed it to be specifically beneficial to all dogs so that they understand pressure, but not by limiting their range of motion by putting the strap in front of their legs. So tools are great. Make sure that you're calm and relaxed and always start as early as possible. And one thing to hugely remember about big dogs, even though they get bigger, most people associate a bigger dog with a more intense training tool. I can't tell you the number of people that I see with big dogs that are on prong collars. Just because the dog is big and they're strong doesn't mean that you have to use harsher and harsher tools. If you use the right tools and they promote a method of relaxation for you, then you will actually be able to walk your big dog with fingertips because they learn the way any other dog learns, that when there's a boundary and there's pressure being created, if you can teach them how to back off that pressure with ease, then the dog is actually so much more tuned into themselves. So it really doesn't matter how big the dog is. What matters is the consistency and the proper tools cueing your dog for exactly what you want them to do. So I just really want to kind of put that in there because a lot of the times when dogs jump or they lunge, the one thing that a lot of owners go to is a harsher tool. And I've just found through, working with hundreds and hundreds of dogs over the last 10 years and working with a lot of big dogs, puppies, and also, a lot of big dogs that are way bigger than me, but that have developed behavioral issues, I've just started to observe it has nothing to do with the harshness of the tool. It has to do with the level of communication. And I'm just observing that all dogs, no matter how big or how small, when you get their attention at the right place, at the front of their chest, almost at their chest bone, and there's a clear, consistent boundary, you can turn around any size dog. And it's real important for big dogs because the bigger that they are, the harsher the tool could actually also affect their biomechanics in their body, which could then relate to much bigger problems later on, like with arthritises or back issues. So I just really promote totally humane tools that will never choke your dog, but that actually help improve the communication between the two of you.
Okay, well, I think that probably does that for tonight. I want to open it up so people can ask questions, so we're going to take it off the recording.
Okay, hang on one sec. Thanks, everybody, for listening.